Hamilton, Ravi Karen, Hani Massoud, and Sanji Lopez. Our executive director, Julie Crosby. Special thanks to Becca Staley, John Randolph, Paul Powell, Mike DiFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Hugh Grand, Dennis Moynihan, David Prude, and Dennis McCormick. To see our shows and podcast, video or audio, you can go to democracynow.org. You can also get our daily digest. Just go to democracynow.org to sign up. Also, to see the various topics we cover throughout the years, our 27 years, you can go to democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks so much for joining us.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. It's Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Kudos always to KFAI, such a powerful and important voice in our community and such a connector, bringing national, local, cultural streams of information together, elevating, communicating, sort of building a network of good and of doability. I love that we are here. Well, as always, I want to first invite you to support this program, The Conversation with Al McFarlane, by going to our YouTube channel, YouTube Insight News, and subscribe to Insight News. We want to grow our subscriber base, and we are well past 300. We're looking to get it to 400 short-term, 1,000 in midterm, and we need your help. So wherever you are, if you're connecting to us by YouTube at Black Press USA or by Facebook channels, Insight News and Black Press USA, or whether you're connecting through our Twitter page or LinkedIn, take a minute in the course of the hour and go over to the Insight YouTube channel and subscribe. Share, tell your friends that we're here. We appreciate you. You know, and if you got comments on any of the channels, you can go to the comment section, create a conversation, and let's talk to each other via the comment section on the channel that you're on. We can watch for those and share those over the course of the conversation today. We've got a great program. I've got a friend and a leader in community, one of the, I call them luminaries, the lights in our community, and that's Mark Nerenhausen. He's the president and CEO of Hennepin Theatre Trust. In a few minutes, he'll be joining me to go over the whole arts world, what's happening in arts in the country, in the world, and particularly in downtown Minneapolis, how the question of art and community is approached, how we describe critical intersections for engagement and for illuminating the life and art and the beauty of our lives. Well, it's going to be a great conversation. And if you know somebody that's associated with or a fan of or a beneficiary of the great work of Hennepin Theatre Trust and of the arts in general, call them up, tell them to listen to this program. And if they've got a question or comment, put it in one of the comment sections. Let me begin by hot topics, at a couple today that I want to share with you. One is an article that is by Gary Fields of the Associated Press. You can see it at insightnews.com. The article says the report finds democracy for Black Americans is under attack. It opens with a photograph of Mark Morial and Reverend Al Sharpton and other leaders making a press conference outside of the West Wing of the White House. It's a file photo from July of 2021, but it gives you the gravity of the concerns that are still being expressed. The article says that extreme views adopted by some local, state, and federal political leaders who try to limit what history can be taught to limit what history can be taught in schools and who seek to undermine how Black officials perform their jobs are among the top threats to democracy for Black Americans, the National Urban League says. Mark Nerenhausen, the former New Orleans mayor who leads the Civil Rights and Urban Advocacy Organization, cited the most recent example, the vote this month by the Republican-controlled Tennessee House to oust 2 Black representatives for violating a legislative rule. The pair had participated in a gun control protest inside the chamber after the shooting that killed 3 students and 3 staff members at a Nashville school. Morial said, quote, "We have censorship and Black history suppression, and now this. It's another piece of fruit from the same poisonous tree, the effort to suppress and contain." Well, as you know, both Tennessee lawmakers were quickly reinstated by leaders in their districts and were back at work in the House after an uproar that spread beyond the state. So this report, which was released Saturday, draws on data and surveys from a number of organizations, including UCLA Law School, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the Anti-Defamation League. The collective findings reveal an increase in recent years in hate crimes and efforts to change classroom curriculums, attempts to make voting more difficult, and extremist views being normalized in politics, the military, and law enforcement. It goes on. Go to insightnews.com. Check it out. It's an important topic. The second topic is closer to home, and it's a piece that is written and presented as a guest commentary in this week's edition, today's edition, I think it is, or this week's edition of Insight News, but we published it first on April 21st. And it's by Brett Buckner. First of all, kudos or congrats to Brett Buckner. He has been also selected to lead a group called the Friends of the Children, the Twin Cities chapter, doing great mentoring work. It's a national organization creating its first presence here in Minnesota. Congratulations, Brett Buckner. Brett wrote an article, a commentary called Minnesota's Highways Need Funding, but this isn't the way to do it. And again, that's at insightnews.com. Check it out. I'll just share a couple of paragraphs from that. Brett says, "It's an accepted fact that many innovative state development projects which will improve the lives of residents require some of their funding to come from taxpayers. Most of the time," he says, "the increases are marginal and diversely spread throughout the taxpayer population, so no one feels too much of a burden. Unfortunately, for Minnesota residents, this is not one of those times." Brett Buckner says a controversial bill is currently making its way through the state legislature, seeking to add a 75-cent tax to every delivery made in the state, whether it be food, groceries, retail goods, an Amazon package, or a custom-made good from a small business. This tax is applied unilaterally to all deliveries. It doesn't matter if a millionaire or a struggling single mother is making the purchase. Both parties will pay the same 75 cents tax. This applies to the quantity of goods as well. Ordering either a family-sized sofa or a paperback book will incur the same tax. He says the motivation behind the bill is that the tax has the potential to generate over $120 million in revenues by 2027, according to the Minnesota Department of Revenue, which will go towards funding for road and transportation projects. But he says this sizable amount is meaningless when it's money taken directly from the hands of people who need it the most. The individuals that rely on grocery, food, household item deliveries are not the upper middle class families that we may be thinking of. In fact, it's typically historically underserved and minority communities which depend the most on delivery services and will be most severely affected by such a tax. What do you think? At least we have the question on the table before us. And if you've got a comment or a thought, a reaction, let us know it. You can respond in our chat or in any of the comment sections on one of the channels. Drop us a letter. We still take letters to the editor, so you can send a letter to us to Insight News, and we'd love to have your voice. Well, let me bring my guest on today, and my guest is Mark Nerenhausen. He's the leader at the Hennepin Theatre Trust. He's been on before. I've always enjoyed the time I spend with him. And Mark, this is no exception. I'm anticipating a wonderful conversation with you for the next few minutes. Thank you for being here. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I just loved your reference to still taking letters. Here we are. I just got back from a conference talking about digital and immersive theater, and you're referencing letters. And I think that's wonderful. We still need to keep that human touch alive in the world today.
Well, that's a good place to talk, because I'm saying, Mark, that I want to encourage in the Black community more aggressive embrace and utilization of Black print media. Why? It's kind of like moved to the realm of foregone conclusion that the world is digital and that most people, particularly the young people, are getting their information on their devices, right? And so the presumption and assumption is that there is no more need or no more relevance for the traditional printed word. And I protest, right? I beg to differ. And I think that as a matter of interest and as a matter of principle, we owe it to ourselves as parents and as citizens to make sure we don't lose the gift of the printed word and the power of printing, what it means in terms of the historical record and our access to it. And so I'm wanting to figure out ways we can have projects that have more, kindergarten and primary school and middle school and high school students have relationships with the newspaper, either writing it or reading it and talking about it, delivering it. So I'm thinking out loud, but it's important to, as we move into the technological future of AI, to not lose the tangibilities that have brought us this far. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because that does touch back on conversations that we've had before about the importance and the power of the arts, and that sense of relationship, that sense of the eternal need for humans to connect with each other. And the thing about a lot of the digital stuff, it's not the digital per se, it's the ephemeral nature of that. And one of the great things that we saw with the reopening of the theaters is a reaffirmation of people's desire to have a shared experience, to have the relationships that you're talking about, whether it's through the printed word, whether it's something substantive, and it's about a voice. I mean, theater isn't just about entertainment for the moment. The arts is not just about entertainment for the moment, although that certainly is part of it. But there's something deeper that it touches in our souls, and that it touches with us as a community. It's about how we speak to each other, how we learn about others, how we show the world who we are. And so I think your points about preserving relationships, building community, going beyond just that ephemeral, momentary aspect of digital communication is something that's near and dear to our hearts, and that we understand is important about Hennepin Theatre Trust, because Hennepin Theatre Trust isn't just the organization that presents shows. We are entrusted with the civic memory and all that Hennepin Avenue represents as a gathering place for the community and what it means to be community. So I really appreciate your approach and what you're saying about how we come together.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is Mark Nerenhausen. He's president and CEO of Hennepin Theatre Trust. Thanks to Deborah White, DJ White. Glad that you're listening to the program. And Power 96, thank you. Checking us out from New Orleans, Michelle Madison, out on the East Coast. Thank you for being a loyal and present member of our audience on a daily basis. Thank you so much. And love to have anybody else weigh in, chime in. Let us know where you're watching the program from on any of the channels that you may be connecting to. Mark, question one, what strategies have you implemented to support and promote diverse artistic experiences in Minneapolis? What role have you taken on, and what role has the trust taken on to elevate the question of diversity?
Diversity is at the heart of what we do, because we're unique among a lot of arts organizations that we're not committed to advancing a particular art form. Rather, we use the arts to make the community a better place, to showcase to the community who we are, to speak to each other and speak to the world. And so diversity is at the heart of what we do. And because we're not committed to advancing a particular art form, we are able to act as a platform for all art forms, for all members of the community. So our theaters are open to everyone that wants to rent the theaters. It's not just the stuff that we choose to put in the theaters. What you see is what the community chooses to put into the theaters. So we are very much and very aware that we're a gathering place. Above and beyond that, we work really closely with a lot of community groups, not only to say that the theaters are there, but to encourage their use of that. And that means going so far as to provide rent-free use of some of our spaces for a whole range of community arts groups. Theater 55, Classical Actors Ensemble, the Black Storytellers Gathering. I mean, the list goes on, and we work literally with dozens of organizations a year, not only to give them a place to perform, but to connect them with over 600,000 people on our mailing list and who are part of our social influence world, to make the world aware that they exist. And not that they exist just as an arts organization, but to give their voice a megaphone, to amplify their voice. We work with organizations. Every gallery exhibit that you see is us providing assets for other people in the community to speak to their audience with their voice. And then, just a couple quick examples through our public art program. We're working with NACD, the Native American Development Corporation, on a project called We're Still Here, where we pick a cohort of Indigenous artists every year. And we not only showcase their work, but we also provide them with training to build a career as well. Our public art program, It's the People, with billboard-sized portraits in the downtown. It's a way to engage young artists from many different backgrounds and to really hold a mirror up to the community of who we are and make the statement that these are literally the faces of our community. So whether you're a visitor, whether you're a resident, whether you work downtown, you're seeing in billboard high portraits who we are as a community. So again, that support, that engagement, that sense of community, that's what Hennepin Avenue has been about since before there was a city here. And that's the mission and the purpose that we are entrusted to steward and perpetuate for the next generation.
Well, you've mentioned some of these already, but tell me more about local cultural enrichment initiatives that you're involved with. The Native American, that's great. What other things are you doing that reflect this impetus, this move?
Well, another one that we're really proud of, and it's a long-standing partnership, has been with Culture Club and Youth Link. And we're connecting them with projects that we're doing with the Downtown Council and the Downtown Improvement District to really enliven the downtown, to reanimate the downtown. So we have a program that's called 5 to 10, and on Broadway nights, we present, actually one of the places that we work with is the alley right next to Fair School. So we engage Fair School, we engage with the kids in Culture Club and Youth Link, and it's a way of providing them with a platform. It's a way to provide them with a voice, because they help create the shows. They determine what goes on the stage. And it's a way of building awareness among the theater goers that we're more than just theater, but again, we are the heart and soul of the community. And those students, those young people that you see on the stage, the people that are creating the work, that is also the voice of our collective community. and it's the voice of the future of our community. You know, we work with programs in Brooklyn Center. We've worked with the recreation department there to make sure that they can bring students and young people through their recreation program to our downtown. And then probably finally, and the most significant one, is our education program.
Mm-hmm.
We work with over 100 schools statewide, and these are schools that represent the entire face of the community. They represent rural, they represent urban, they represent schools that that show what we are going to look like in terms of race, culture, ethnicity, gender identity, everything in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. And it's connecting with them on their terms, supporting their programs. And that's really important for us. I can't emphasize that enough, that it's about Hennepin Theatre Trust curating the relationships, not curating the content. We are proud to give a platform and a voice to the community using our assets on our stages, but those aren't our programs. That's the voice of the community and their programs.
And so what does that mean for individual artists, particularly emerging artists and creators, for young people that are looking to find a way to make an impact on the Minneapolis or Twin Cities or Minnesota arts scene? How does your approach, your structure, and your accessibility enable and support individuals to emerge and to take advantage of the pathways you've created and to make new pathways? How does that happen?
It happens on a lot of different levels. So the first level that I want to stress is we pay all of our artists. So it happens right there. We don't believe that, so often it's perform for us for free and we'll give you all this exposure. I can't buy a loaf of bread with exposure. I can't
be a starving artist.
Yeah. So we're saying here, we're going to pay you. And so, and we hire a lot of artists. We hire teaching artists through our education program. We have dozens of teaching artists that are earning a paycheck because of their skills, but also are connecting with the future artists. So one of the ways we do this is we connect established artists with new artists. So people starting out can learn from the best. They can learn from people who are there. We also do it by consciously connecting, like in the case of We're Still Here. It would be real easy to work with NACD and say, we're going to commission artists to do a piece. Mm-hmm. But more than that, we understand that we're not just commissioning a work, we are also helping them to start a career. So along with the commission for the work, we also have advising and consulting on what does it take to build a career? How do you market yourself? Who do you need to connect with? How do you think about a career in the arts? Mm-hmm. So there's that consciousness that it's not a one and done, but this is an extended relationship. We do it because we connect with other institutions. So it's Culture Club, it's Youth Link, it's NACD, it's Fair School, it's Minneapolis College. The list goes on because we know that it's the relationships, not just with us, but with other institutions that give stability for these artists. And then finally, at the end of it, we give them exposure. So we don't start with that, we end with it. And the practical fact is we are a huge platform. We have an email list of some 400,000 people. If you include all of our social media, we reach 600,000 people a week on a regular basis. And for a young artist to have their work put in front of 600,000 people is a huge benefit. And then on top of that, for whether it's artists or whether it's arts organizations, we actually invite our donors to the events that these groups host. And we tell them, feel free to solicit our donors. Our donors care about community. They make choices all the time. And we want them to be aware of artists and arts organizations that share our values, that share our commitment to community. So we're not only concerned about hanging their art on the wall, but we're also concerned with building careers and putting money in their pockets. So there's
the business of being art. That's wonderful. I always talk to you about how downtown looks. And I remember when both COVID and I think mostly the Rodney King incident occurred, downtown was boarded up. Has downtown come back? And is it coming back right now? Is it coming back differently? Even before Rodney King, there was a discussion you and I talked about, sort of a concern about crime and about the perception of crime and the fear of crime, some of which is probably based in reality, some of which is irrational and maybe based in race and racism. So a lot of things go into the mix of what the downtown is and how the downtown engages all of the stakeholders there. And I wonder if you would go into what you found when you came here half a dozen years ago and how things have progressed. What's been the arc of the movement of the public mind in downtown Minneapolis, and from your perspective as an arts and community institution downtown?
I like the way you used the word. You first said, has downtown come back? And then you said, is downtown coming back? And I prefer the latter, because downtowns are always coming back. Downtowns are always evolving. And, as you and I talked before the show, one of the lines that you said that I shamelessly have stolen from you is this idea that it's not about bringing downtown back to what it was, but the idea that we have been blessed with the opportunity to have the responsibility for writing the next chapter in the downtown. And that's an ongoing thing. I've been in this business long enough, in my career long enough, to know that I started out in this business with the idea that the very first performing arts center that I was involved with, the idea was, how are we rebuilding? How are we bringing the downtown back? And I find it interesting that after decades in the business, I'm still in the business of answering that question, because it's always a work in progress, because cities and communities are always a work in progress. But more specifically, I think one, the downtown, we're seeing it come back. In terms of the business part of our business, it's doing great. We're for all intents and purposes back at pre-COVID levels. Next week or so, we have a show in the 2 shows of a family production in the State Theater. We have Hamilton in the Orpheum. We have a show in the Pantages. We have Brave New Workshop in the Dudley Riggs Theater. And at the same time, we have a baseball game downtown. So by any metric, downtown is back in that sense. We have people, still tens and tens, 55,000 plus people living downtown, and more apartments being built. So downtown and all that it represents is in demand. Business and back to office is certainly changing. How we think about that is going to change. That will have ripple effects. But I think downtown is back and downtown is coming back. Downtown will not be the same downtown it was 15 years ago. But then again, it wasn't the same downtown it was 15, 20 years before that. So we're always in the process of changing. I think your point, though, about public safety, we're seeing the numbers dramatically increase in terms of better public safety. Crime is decreasing. Perceptions of safety. A year ago, when we reopened our theaters, that was one of the first questions on everyone's mind. I don't hear that at all from our patrons. In fact, our patrons, I was meeting with someone just yesterday, and he showed me a an Instagram post that he made of him underneath the marquee of Hamilton, and he was saying how all of his friends said, "Gee, this doesn't look like the deserted city that everyone makes it out to be," and that's the case. It's far from it. So yeah, I'm a huge booster of downtowns because that's where we come together.
Fear and perception of fear, and the basis for that. How does that play right now? I mean, so for a little bit, there were shootings down on First Avenue. Bar closing time. There've been incidences downtown, and everybody's concerned all over the state about young people and carjackings. I don't know if that happens downtown or out in the community, but it's a background noise in everybody's mind, and you got to be
and again,
aware. Yeah.
If we look at the data, we see that by all of those metrics, crime has dropped. Number of shootings, carjackings, everything. The statistics are all down. The efforts that the city has made, that our civic leaders have made, not just the formal police department, but the downtown council and all of the leadership coming together, the downtown is vastly safer than it was by every measurable statistic. And I think along with that, the perception of safety has also changed. Now, having said that, I think there's always questions in any large urban area, that it's not the same. But I think, and I think you're absolutely right. There are underlying there are always questions of fear of the other, whether it's, based on race, whether it's based on economic status, whether it's based on unfamiliarity. And that's where I think it's important for us to concentrate on building community, on demonstrating who we are and our commonality and the shared humanity that the arts really bring to everything. But in terms of basic public safety, downtown is extraordinarily safe. And especially, as you yourself said, people are not coming to our theaters at bar closing time. They're here well before that. 8 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock on Hennepin Avenue, when the streets are flooded with theater goers, we have not experienced any issues.
When you, I want to weigh in, Mark, on the question of race and ethnic and culture and stuff like that. When you, as you've described, talked about the value and the power of art, of bringing people together to help us be co-creators of the future. What do you see? I'm thinking, I'm raising the question of we've heard the term around George Floyd of what's the right word for it? It's slipping my mind now, but we've referred to it as a reckoning. Mm-hmm. And so if the notion of reckoning is in the back of your mind, and if you look at it not as a thing that you have to be, that is hostile, but as an opportunity to reconcile community, society, culture, what do you envision as a future? What is the best of all worlds, given history of racial inequity, given history of economic inequity, of all the things that there are disparities around? What do we have in front of us? Not as a problem, but as an opportunity, and believing that we're going to rise to every challenge. What do you envision we'll be creating? What do you think? What's in your mind's eye?
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking specifically from the perspective of Hennepin Theatre Trust, this goes back to the very first question you asked, and it's based on our very structure, where us as an open platform, we are not the mediators of who gets to present here. We are not the co-creators. We're not trying to co-curate the content. We invite everybody into this platform. We support their work on this platform, and we amplify their work on this platform. But it's their show, their content, their audience using these assets. And one of the first things is, when we talk about inclusion, it's making sure that people have access to the premier venues and the premier platforms in the city. It's not enough for us to point and say, well, in the aggregate, we have this range of arts organizations, but to see that one, you have to go over to this little tiny theater in this little tiny neighborhood. No, we are the very same theaters, the very same organization, the very same theater district that hosts nationally recognized shows like Hamilton and Lion King, and the list goes on, is also the very same organization that hosts the Black Storytellers, that hosts the Filipino American Cultural Organization doing their filming videos of their dance, that provides gallery space to the African American Heritage Museum or to Vivo. And so I think that fundamental premise of equality of access, and not just access to the buildings, but equality to the media that lets people know that they are in the buildings. So our website, our email, the same email system that promotes Hamilton, promotes all of those shows as well. And I think that for Hennepin Theatre Trust, that's one of the key things that really matters to us, is that whether you are Lin-Manuel Miranda or a small local arts organization, you still have access to the same resources. In fact, even more so, because Hennepin Theatre Trust actually subsidizes the rent for those community organizations using our venues.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is Mark Nerenhausen, President, CEO of Hennepin Theatre Trust. And Mark, describe the real estate. We didn't talk about that. You've mentioned several of the venues, but let's hear it in one kind of a tour.
Okay.
Take us on an audio tour of the Hennepin Theatre District, Hennepin Theatre Trust projects and venues.
Sure. So Hennepin Theatre Trust is the custodian, the steward of the Hennepin Theatre District and all that represents. And as we know, even before there was a city here, what is now Hennepin Avenue was a trail for the indigenous people between the river and the lake. So this piece of real estate has always carried huge literal and symbolic importance for everyone that's ever been here. And that's by way of acknowledging the land that we are on and the land that we are stewards of today. The Hennepin Theatre District dates back about 100 years with the construction of the Orpheum Theater. And so today, we, Hennepin Theatre Trust, operate the Orpheum Theater, the State Theater, the Pantages Theater, the Dudley Riggs Theater, and 900 in the Hennepin, 900 Hennepin, the Event Center. Those are the venues that we operate. That's where our events take place. In addition to that, we've built a really powerful ecosystem around that activity. And that means that we work very closely with Minneapolis College. We work very closely with Fair School, right across the street from the Orpheum Theater. Mm-hmm. We work even though we don't own them, we are partners with the restaurants and the hospitality organizations, the hotels and lodging establishments in the district. And finally, we're partners with the businesses here, the office towers that understand that we create an identity for the district. So the Hennepin Theatre District, the actual real estate that we own are 5 venues, but above and beyond that, we influence and are influenced by dozens of other organizations to create the effect of this really is the city's living room. It's the city's, if someone, what used to be when you built houses, people would build a media room. We're like the city's media room, if you will. And we acknowledge also that goes beyond the property that we control. It embraces the work that First Avenue does, that the Kohl's Center does, so that the Dakota does. So we are at the hub of a huge cultural system, Orchestra Hall, McFarlane, the Guthrie Theater, we're together. We are what put the city on the map nationally and internationally.
I had a guest on from Children's Theater, the artist or the writer who's producing a show that starts, I think, today or tomorrow up there at Children's Theater. But she was saying how renowned our area is for art and theater. And talk about that. You've hinted on it. You've claimed your center space as the convener or steward. But really, art in Minnesota is a phenomenal experience. What's the big picture, and how do all the parts work together? I remember I presented to a group that was called, I can't remember the full name, but it was the Large Theater something group, and they were meeting a couple of years ago, and they still meet, I believe, to talk about the question of diversity and equity and access across all of the theater resources in Twin Cities. And the important thing is that these were organizations that had budgets of $10 million or more. So they were the top players in the marketplace. Talk about that largesse, the breadth and depth of commitment to an opportunity in arts, and how it brings us together to shift and make change.
I'm really glad you used that word breadth and depth, because that's critical. Because on just the statistics alone, we are so fortunate here to have the cultural organizations that we have. If you go down the list, every single one of them is a leader in their sector. Guthrie, Children's Theater, the opera, the orchestras, St. Paul Chamber Orchestra and the Minnesota Orchestra. I mean, by every metric, we have some of the top cultural organizations in the country, MIA, the Walker. I was just at a meeting and I was talking with a theater leader in Toronto. And Toronto is one of the great cultural capitals of the world. And his first reaction was, oh my gosh, Minneapolis, I can't wait to go there. I hear so much about all that you are doing in the city. So we are nationally recognized, internationally recognized across the board. Just Hennepin Theatre Trust alone, the Orpheum Theater ranks, I think it was number 14 in the world.
Wow.
For attendance for theaters of that size. The State Theater ranks in the top 50 worldwide for theaters that size. The Pantages Theater ranks, I think, 75th in the world for theaters that size. So, and we, Hennepin Theatre Trust, ranks among the top 20 largest performing arts centers in the country. So by these metrics of budget, attendance, across the board, we are all world-class organizations. But the thing that I think we're all most proud of, and I think you touched on it, is the depth and breadth, because these large organizations are also deeply connected to mid-size and smaller organizations. And we realize that we are all part and parcel of a whole. We don't stand apart from them. So when you look at theater as a whole in this city, we're one of the top theater destinations in the country, bar none. When you talk about choral music or music in general, I mean, we all know the legacy of Prince, and but it's not just Prince; it's lots of other musicians. We have Girl from the North Country opening our Broadway series, for heaven's sakes, next year. We have a big mural of Bob Dylan. We have a mural of Prince downtown. So that legacy of music, and it's the depth and breadth. It's the fact that people don't just go to Hamilton. They go, I love going to 10,000 Things and sitting in a bare room with an audience, with the stage, with not even a stage, a bare floor in the middle with 60 other people watching phenomenal theater and supporting 10,000 Things as they take work out to prisons and other places. So again, that depth and breadth that we talk about is something that we don't want to lose sight of, because ultimately that depth and breadth is what, it goes back to your earlier point, that's what allows us to build the next generation of artists. And there's a consciousness, there's an intentionality, there's a deliberateness about how we as a cultural community perpetuate ourselves and perpetuate our community.
You know, I love the way that you bring both enthusiasm and clarity, passion to your description of the work. And it makes me wonder, out of all the things you've been a part of here in Twin Cities, are there one or two things that are indelibly etched, in your feeling space as tremendously successful, things that have brought you the most sense of fulfillment and completion because they worked and they did everything that they were supposed to do, and even more, that they surprised you? Anything like that in your story?
Wow.
Probably many things. I'm not sure.
There's a lot of things, and I think I think you hit on. I'm rarely speechless, Al, but you've got me here a little bit. The tendency in this business is for people to think about the big blockbuster shows, and those aren't the ones. Those are blockbuster shows for a reason. You expect them to be successful. You expect them to be significant. But there's so many smaller moments that stand out. So, for example, when we did the show Come From Away, we had the Canadian Consul General here, and we were talking about what that moment meant, what inspired that show, the events surrounding 9/11. And that moment was so authentic and so real and so human. It had nothing to do with promoting the show. Mm-hmm. It had to do with promoting humanity, promoting community, promoting connections between people. And there are so many of those moments like that. I think all of the work that we're doing at 900 Hennepin and now at 827 at the Riggs Theater, opening up our venues to smaller arts organizations that are starting out or that are building, and seeing the importance of providing them with the space, with the visibility, with the idea that they are occupying the same social space as shows like Hamilton and Lion King. Every time we do one of those shows, whether it's a reception for the artist who are part of We're Still Here and the work with NACD, whether it's a Vivo, those really human moments always speak to me and remind me of why we're in this business. And then I think just any night that I'm at the show and stepping out and watching people arriving at the theater, just that sheer human excitement and joy, and seeing families coming here. And when we opened Frozen, it was so funny because we had all the little kids, all the little girls dressed up in their Frozen princess dresses coming to see the show. And right next door, Mackenzie's is there, a Cleveland Browns football bar. And we had Cleveland Browns fans there too. And it was great, that juxtaposition of
Sure.
These just people enjoying each other, enjoying a common interest, and seeing firsthand what it means to bring community together. It's about what happens, not always on the stage or in the concert hall. It's about what happens in our heart, and it's about what happens in the larger community. Those are the moments that continually stick with me, not only here, but throughout my career.
Mark, I call myself an expert audience member. I love theater. I love music in particular. I love art. And I always feel fortunate, blessed to have an opportunity to bear witness to things that have been created or that are being created, and to bear witness to the act of creation that occurs when a person has a chance to be in front of or around or near something that has a quality of continuing becoming, even though it's been
Yes.
done. That's kind of
Yes.
what you've
Yes.
been talking about for the course of this conversation, I think. And I love that. And what I love is bearing witness to, as an audience member, the being transformed, the feeling of transformation that
Yes.
is personal and private, but that I know probably is experienced in community. And that's the joy of the crowd, because as you are having a personal relationship with the truth that is unveiling itself before your eyes, that same thing is happening, maybe in different language, different words, different explanations, but as an experience, it is unfolding in and around the people that you are in community with as audience. So I love that. Does that sound like a good description of?
That sounds like a great description. If you want to see becoming in action, if you want to see the joy of communal experience, you have to be in the theaters for our showcase performance in June. So we have an education program. We work with musical theater programs, with theater programs in 100 schools around the state. And every year we select a number of those schools to come here to Minneapolis, and those students have 2 days of performances at the State Theater with selections from their musicals. And if you want to see and have faith in the future and see the act of becoming, sit in the State Theater with 2,000 high school theater students on stage in the audience, with parents, with grandparents, friends, and family, experiencing the joy of creation, the celebration of creativity, and the shared experience of coming together around the arts. And then realize that that's what happens 52 weeks a year. That's why Hennepin Theatre Trust matters. That's why, and that those benefits that accrue to the entire state. It's not just in that moment of performance, but what you take away from the performance informing your life in a small little bit. That's that sense of becoming. I like that. I like that a lot. That's what we're about. We're always becoming.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest, Mark Nerenhausen, President and CEO of Hennepin Theatre Trust. Mark, let me get personal with you. How did you come to this work? What's your own story? I know that we talked about you having worked in theater, you said a number of years now, but talk about the 5-year-old Mark. Who were his parents, his grands, and how have all of them poured into you, the 5-year-old, and how has all of that led to the Mark that I'm talking to right now?
Wow. So I grew up on a small island in Wisconsin, Washington Island, Wisconsin, year-round population of about 500. My graduating class had 8 students in it. My high school graduating class, there are 30 students in my high school. And, but when I was 18 years old, my dad took myself and some friends to an old barn in town that was owned by the town, a small little old red barn. And my dad was a Lutheran minister. And what I learned from him, what I took away from him, was the sense of community impact, community service. I think my dad was less concerned about theology and more concerned about building relationships between people, what it meant to be in service to others in a good community. And he took my friends and I to this barn and suggested, hinted strongly that if we were to sweep out this barn, we could create a coffee house there and maybe just have our friends play guitar and be a positive outlet for the energy of young people rather than going down to the beach and building bonfires and drinking.
Right.
So not that we still didn't go down to the beach and build bonfires and drink, but we started this coffee house. And that was my first introduction to running a performing arts center when I was 18 years old. And I'm proud to say that that coffee house is still in operation today, still in business. But those fundamental principles of, I saw firsthand and very powerfully what the arts meant to people. It was what it meant to build creativity and provide an outlet for creativity for young people, what it meant for people to have a voice and a platform in the community, what it meant for the audience members to realize the togetherness that they have that they didn't realize. I mean, one of the concerts that sticks out in my mind is Sylvia Landon, who was, I think, 98 years old at the time, sitting in the front row one evening when young Timmy Lyons, who was 19 years old and going to Purdue, was playing Grateful Dead music, and thinking, how often do you see 98-year-old senior citizens in the community enjoying music, Grateful Dead music played by, someone who wasn't even alive when Jimmy Garcia died, or Jerry Garcia died. And that just stuck with me, that kind of imagery. And ever since then, I think I've realized that I got into the business of running performing arts centers because that's the part that grabbed me, that idea that we're not limited to an art form. We're not here to advance an art form. We're here to advance community building. And so that has informed me. And I've had the great good fortune of being able to be in a career like that I find fulfilling, that I love, and that I'm blessed, like you were saying, to bear witness and be in the shadows, on the sideline, in the wings, and watching and feeling these incredible moments of, whether it's the performance, whether it's seeing the audiences, whether it's talking to people afterwards, whether it's watching someone's career get built. I couldn't ask for a better career than that.
What are the cities that you work in? What other houses did you run?
Oh my gosh, it's going to sound like I couldn't hold down a job. So I started out in Nashville. I also worked at the Milwaukee Performing Arts Center. I worked in Knoxville, Tennessee, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Maui, Kahului, Hawaii, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Dallas, Texas. I taught at Syracuse University, and then I ended up here. And this is the best city I've ever lived in. And I mean that absolutely honestly. There's not a better city in the country that I've worked in.
Got about 2 minutes left. Let me have you invite our listening audiences and viewing audiences to the Hennepin Theatre Trust experiences.
Oh my gosh. So the best thing is just go to hennepintheatretrust.org. You'll see everything that we have coming up. We literally, it's not a stretch to say we have something for everyone, because we have hundreds and hundreds of performances a year. And in addition to the ticketed performances, come downtown, look at our public art programs, come through our art galleries, multiple art galleries downtown, or support your local high school theater program that we are also probably helping to support. So whether you live in Bemidji or Alexandria or are right downtown, we are probably your next door neighbor and are doing programs that affect your life and invite your participation.
Mark Nerenhausen, thank you so much, my friend. Good to see you. Great conversation. Let's do it again. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.